Hey everyone, it's Josh alongside Harrison, and this is another episode of Awkward Sports. And the Golden State Warriors are moving on to the second round. A team that went 11-30 on the road this season got, count them, two, not one, but two marshmallows, not wins on the road against the Sacramento Kings. And Harrison, let me tell you, it was obviously driven behind the magic that is Steph Curry, 50 points in game 7. That's a new record. And then, of course, Kevon, Dennis Rodman, Looney, 43 rebounds in the last two Warriors wins. That was enough for the Warriors to outlast the Sacramento Kings. They're going to play the Los Angeles Lakers in the second round for what is probably the most anticipated matchup of this playoffs and maybe the most watched playoff series we have seen in a long time.
Oh, yeah. And you mentioned Looney. I just want to point out 3 games of 20 assists or more. That I just happened to catch that on the score bug while watching it. And that's one of the best since the NBA-ABA merger. That's not a small amount of time. That's going back to the 1970s. So you have a record for game points total in a game 7, plus one of the best performances off the boards in the last, I guess it'd be close to 50 years now at this point, going back to the 70s. It was a phenomenal series too. And one thing I just want to give credit to, shout out to Sacramento Kings fans. It's all over. You know it is. And you all just stand up and applaud your team for the best season in nearly 20 years. We all know how long you had waited. The team has waited. And I respect it a ton. Just being able to see you guys just take it all in. Just appreciate that, the pain is over. Next year, the Kings are going to be back. They have a good group. They have a phenomenal head coach. For once, the future is bright in Sacramento.
Absolutely. I think you made some great points there. And one thing I have to just say about this Kings team and about just the faithful and about the culture that they have over there in Sacramento, I think we've been selling them short. This faithful has been waiting a long time to get back to the playoffs. They got back. And in this game 7, for the first 3 or 4 minutes watching this game, I couldn't even hear Mike Breen, the play-by-play voice. I thought his mic was too quiet. No, it was just a ruckus in there. And the Kings, they credit to them. They went toe-to-toe with the Warriors in the first half, and a lot of teams are able to do that. But one thing the Warriors have been able to do throughout their history, for whatever reason, when they come out of the half, they flip the switch in the third quarter. They dominate third quarter.
God, did they flip the switch. Sacramento led by 2 points at the half. Listen, against a team like the Warriors, that's pretty solid. You go in the half, you have a lead no matter how slim it is, and you can go into the locker room and just say, okay, cool, here's what we did right. How can we pull further away? That just didn't happen. Golden State looked at themselves in the mirror and said, we're the team that has been here before, not them. And they ran away with it. I just want to pull up the totals for each quarter here. I had it up and it went away. So let me just type in Warriors.
And while you're looking at that, I also wanted to touch on the Warriors. Obviously, throughout their history, they have found just creative ways to come back from behind in games and in series. They had never come back from a 2-0 series deficit before. They can now say they have done that. But they also did it in a unique way this time. Throughout their history, you kind of see, obviously, a lot of contributing factors that make the Warriors go. Most notably, Klay Thompson. He's known for his Game 6 shenanigans where he just goes off from the three-point line. Well, here he is in Game 7. They're looking for him to dominate, and he shoots 2 of 10 from three-point range. If you gave me that stat alone, you would have had to have a spectacular performance from Steph Curry, and that's exactly what he gave that team. You look at the final score, the Warriors won by 20, 120-100.
It's all because of one guy.
And it didn't feel like that, though, until down the stretch at the end of the game, the Warriors' experience prevailed, And Domantas Sabonis for the Kings, who had a phenomenal start in Game 7, just kind of fizzled out in the second half. Credit to the Warriors defense. And again, the Sacramento Kings, although being the higher seed, I mean, like I said, going into this series, it doesn't matter what seed the Warriors are. Their experience is there. They have the longevity to kind of pace themselves throughout the regular season so that when they get to the playoffs, they're well prepared, ready to go. And you can just see the experience and the coaching from that side of it, especially with Steve Kerr, who knows a thing or two about trying to maintain long-term playoff runs and dynasties.
Yeah, and just to point out, because I got the stat up now, Golden State led in the third quarter 35-23, pulled ahead by 12 points, or I guess 10 points by the end of the third quarter, and then led 29-19 in the fourth to get up by 20. And the thing is, if Steph Curry has the same night he had in Game 6, which, only still a respectable 29 points. What a bomb. Only 29 points. They lose. They would have lost. I'm not saying that it's exactly like that. Maybe somebody else would have picked up a couple baskets that here and there. Someone else, on the alley-oop, it could just been he passed the ball more. But it's more just to emphasize just the insanity of what we saw today. It was really the tale of two halves. You had the one where you think Sacramento is going to possibly pull this one out. But in the end, it's the reigning champs. And we're getting ready now for really what is probably going to be the best show in basketball television coming up. Steph Curry versus LeBron James, the Los Angeles Kings. Or sorry, not the Los Angeles Kings, Los Angeles Lakers. Sorry, I'm already still in a little bit of getting the things mixed in my head a little bit. Yeah, the Sacramento Kings, there's a hockey team called the Kings in Los Angeles. The Los Angeles Lakers. I'm sure someone in the comments section now just went, ooh, you said a no-no? Well, what are you going to do about it? Anyway.
Well, regardless, bad day, bad 24 hours for Kings fans all across the country. Obviously, for those who don't know, hockey's playoffs are also going on at the same time. So
LA Kings just got knocked out by Edmonton. We'll get to that in a later episode. We're gonna have an episode on that entirely. So we'll save that banter for that. We're gonna stick to basketball, reel it in. Josh, how do you think the Warriors will stack up with LeBron and the Lakers now that they've managed to pull this off? It's not your typical 6th seed at all. No, this is the core of really a top 3 seed. So give us a breakdown.
Yeah, so you're right. It's not your typical 6 seed, but it's also not your typical 7 seed. The Lakers are the 7 seed in this year's playoffs. And I can't remember the last time a 6 seed was going to the second round in the postseason for the NBA, let alone having home court advantage. You look at this Lakers team, they retooled the roster midway through the season. They were struggling. They were trying to figure out how to utilize a point guard like Russell Westbrook. The starting lineup role for him wasn't working out. They tried bringing him off the bench. Ultimately, it just didn't work. Then they go out, they make some trades. They bring in D'Angelo Russell, who also used to be part of the Lakers organization. He was drafted way back when with the 2nd overall pick. The Lakers took D'Angelo Russell shortly after the Minnesota Timberwolves took Karl Anthony Towns, and that was in the 2015 NBA draft. Well, D'Angelo Russell's first stint with Los Angeles didn't go as planned, but he put together a solid career for himself in Brooklyn, teams afterward, got himself back in Los Angeles. Now he's the running mate with LeBron. And since they've made those acquisitions, the Lakers look like a new team. Darvin Ham looks like he's got an identity, and the Lakers are going to be right in the mix here with Golden State. This is going to be a classic series of the ages. I think it'll go 7, but at the end of the day, it's going to hinge on the star players. It's going to hinge on LeBron James, and it's going to hinge on Steph Curry. The better star, that team's going to win. The better star in this series, that's the team that's going to go to the conference finals. It is a shame that this isn't a conference finals matchup, but we'll get to the other side of that tree in a moment. The Lakers and the Warriors, Best of 7 series. I think it goes 7. My gut says Golden State just has the camaraderie. They have the team chemistry. They've been around longer together. And that's why I think they will have the edge at home in a game 7. I do think LeBron's going to leave it all out there on the line, but I think the Lakers will be going home after the second round. They'll go into the offseason. It'll be fascinating to see what they do to retool the roster for yet another run next year.
Now, just to ask that asinine question you see on Twitter, how will this affect LeBron's legacy?
Man, I mean, every year it seems like LeBron's legacy is impacted one way or another. I mean, it could be the most unrelated game on the face of the earth. Nikola Jokic could be dropping 50 points against the Orlando Magic in a December evening, and somehow that ties into LeBron's legacy. No, I mean, losing in the second round.
Shohei Ohtani facing Mike Trout in the final at bat of the World Baseball Classic affect LeBron's legacy?
And honestly, when you look at it, the kind of the standard that we kind of use today, if LeBron lost in the second round, the way NBA fans out there measure his legacy, it wouldn't hurt that bad, because apparently your legacy only gets deteriorated if you lose in the finals, according to a lot of purists out there that have arguments for said players. If you don't make it to the finals, you kind of get it. You got to get an out. So this won't have as much weight on LeBron's legacy as per se a loss in the finals did a couple years back with Cleveland again in like 4 or 5 games against Kevin Durant led Golden State Warriors.
Until it actually does, because it's LeBron.
Exactly.
You have to see so-and-so did not lose in the second round to the Golden State Warriors at this point in his career. So therefore, you have to hold LeBron accountable for his massive mistake. He has I'm just pulling this out of my ass, out of the top of my head. It's just how stupid these debates can be.
Yeah. It's funny, and I mean, if Steph Curry keeps playing like this, he's going to enter the GOAT debate not too long from now. Obviously, I'm not going to get into all of it here. I have overtime.
That could be its whole video, really.
I have put together a list of, in my opinion, the 100 greatest basketball players that have ever played this game. And I am talking strictly from, you don't cross eras, you just take the players for what their accomplishments are, what they've been able to do throughout their respective careers. Era does not matter in this discussion. Right now, I have Steph Curry at number 10 as a top 10 player out of my 100. He is sitting right now for me at the number 10 spot. LeBron James is sitting at 3. Now, I started thinking, obviously, after
not
this.
Not even 2 like most people.
Not even 2. And I could spend a whole hour on why I don't.
Right. Who's 1 and 2? I assume like what, Michael Jordan and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar?
Yeah, I got Jordan at 1. I got Kareem at 2. Again, not crossing eras. One of the biggest LeBron arguments is, well, the era that they played in. So I have Jordan 1. But to get back to Steph Curry and his point here, I have him at 10. I started looking at possibilities, like how high could he possibly end up by the time it's all said and done?
I think at least top 5.
To me, right now, he's already top 10. It's
got to be at least his ceiling is top 5. His ceiling is top 5 because he already has 4 titles. He'd have 5 if he didn't blow one to LeBron. Just to remind you.
Oh yeah,
it's not the first time they've played each other. There's the infamous Golden State blew a 3-1 lead.
They played each other in the finals 4 straight times. So if you look at those and look at the history between these two guys, they have the history there. They've had great epic battles in the past. But back to the list, I started doing some math in my head. Obviously, Curry's at 4 titles. I put a lot of weight in the championships. I have him at 10 right now. If Curry wins a 5th title, I can see myself elevating him on my list to as high as number 6. And that would be jumping guys that I have ahead of him as Bill Russell, Shaquille O'Neal, Tim Duncan, and Kobe Bryant. He would have as many rings as Kobe and Tim Duncan, but the fact that he changed the game, that's something that Tim Duncan and Kobe, as great as they were, they didn't change the game like Steph Curry did. He's got that on his resume. Kids everywhere are shooting threes. When I grew up playing basketball, it was like frowned upon. You go into the lane, you take the high percentage shot. Credit to Steph Curry for changing the game. He would go as high as 6 on my list. If he goes and wins a 6th title, I am bringing him all the way up to number 4 leapfrogging guys like Wilt Chamberlain and Magic Johnson. He's the best point guard that's ever lived. If he goes and wins a seventh, I don't see the really room for a debate. I could put him at the number one spot because winning is that important in this league. Yes, he may not have the 5 MVPs or the 38,000 points, but he shattered the three-point.
Not to say he can't get close to some of those.
No, not to say that at all. And the way his playing style, he's going to be playing, like his playing style is suited for the long run. He's not a hyper athlete that is built upon jumping out of a building. Players like Russell Westbrook, Kawhi Leonard, those guys eventually break down. They have Derrick Rose. I mean, those guys were hyper athletes. They won an MVP. They wowed you off the screen, but they weren't winning championships. I'm talking Rose and Westbrook in this scenario, not Kawhi,
right.
Obviously champion. But Curry's he's going to be like a Ray Allen, where like he could be 40 and he'll still hit a big shot in the championship game because he's that capable. So that's my ceiling for him. I think he can be the greatest player ever if he keeps winning. But that's about wraps up my take on Steph Curry, the Warriors. I want to pivot over to the second round just started last night. The Denver Nuggets took on the Phoenix Suns in game 1.
Speaking of MVP candidates.
Yeah, with MVP candidate Nikola Jokic, he's won the last 2. The Nuggets blew out the Suns. It wasn't even remotely close. They won the game by 18 points. Kevin Durant showed up for Phoenix, but Nikola Jokic had a phenomenal game, and Jamal Murray led the way. And when Jamal Murray gets going, as we've seen in the bubble, as we've seen in the past, Denver's hard to stop. And I think it's time that we start taking Denver seriously. And when I say we, I mean mainly me, because I look at all these legends that are in the playoffs. Kevin Durant's shown that he can get it done. Curry, LeBron, these guys are proven winners. And when I fill out my bracket, I'm like, those are the guys I see in June. I don't see Denver in June. I don't see Jokic in June. As great as Jokic is, I never am like, oh, he's going to be in the finals. They could make the finals. I owe an apology to Nikola Jokic. This guy is the real deal, not just in the regular season. He's showing it here in the playoffs, and he is showing why he could be a 3 straight time MVP winner. I think it'll go to Embiid, but he is also a deserving candidate as well. The Nuggets are for real. They're going to make noise. They already are doing so. If they beat Phoenix, they're going to get a winner of the Warriors-Lakers series, and whoever wins that series, I think Golden State, they're going to be worn down. Denver, I think, will be fresh, and that series will be up for grabs. And then you look at a possible finals matchup with whoever comes out of the East, Boston, whoever. But Denver has as real shot as anybody this year. The West is wide open, and I think it's time to start giving them their respect.
No, I definitely agree. And when you have a guy that's pushing for a 3-peat in MVPs, you have to at one point say he's got to break through eventually. It's not like the Nuggets are a bad team. And I know a lot, and I know precedent really matters in this sports. This team has never gotten this far. Therefore, they're never going to get this far. It's the same with hockey, really, until, I really need to stop mentioning hockey when we have a hockey episode coming up. It's on
the brain. It's on the brain. Every hockey fan, stay tuned. We're going to have a good one.
Stay tuned. I would love to see the Nuggets in the conference final. One, just to change things up a little bit, just to see some of the other greats have a shot at a title. I think they can do it. I know the Suns, obviously they have the name power and they have some of the best players to ever play in this generation. Not everyone likes their depth. And I think that kind of showed in the first game. It didn't just kind of show. It did show because they lost by 18. So if you're Denver, you really need to take the momentum you got from this first game and not hold back. Maybe if you want to rope-a-dope a little bit in the first quarter just to conserve some energy for a late game push, go for it. But you cannot give Kevin Durant and Chris Paul and all these guys a chance to even remotely think about coming back. You gotta pounce them. The strike while the iron is hot. You're up 1-0. Just say, okay, cool. We need 3 wins. We need 4. Let's go.
Yeah, and I think to your point about the depth, if we go back to the midway point through the season, and you're getting closer past the All-Star break, getting to the trade deadline, the Phoenix Suns made the blockbuster trade. They went out and acquired Kevin Durant. They moved a ton of draft capital in order to do so. But at the same time, there was one player, a very crucial player in this trade that Phoenix really wanted to keep. But Brooklyn would not do the trade without said player, and that said player was Mikal Bridges. Mikal Bridges was a phenomenal two-way player for Phoenix, and obviously adding a generational talent like Kevin Durant comes at a cost, and he's worth the sacrifice. But I do think, to your point about depth, Phoenix has lost a little bit, especially on the defensive end, from what Bridges brought you every night. He may not have had the name power that Kevin Durant holds and the scoring ability night in and night out that Kevin Durant has, but he is still a proven scorer, a great two-way player out of Villanova, and a guy who has really flourished, not just when he was in Phoenix, but also now that he's gone over to Brooklyn. He's had a very good rest of his season. He's had a very promising career so far, and that is another player that Phoenix wished they had on their roster, and somebody that came out of Villanova from Philadelphia that the Sixers actually took on draft night. I'll get to the Sixers in a second. Made a draft night trade with Phoenix for Zaire Smith, and you have to wonder, that's another player that kind of got away from Philly. Now I'm going to transition to Philly, a team that has built this thing on trust the process, built this thing on we're going to rebuild around stars. We're going to draft high every year possible, and we're going to hit on as many picks as we can. Well, they let Markelle Fultz go. They draft night traded Bridges away. Ben Simmons didn't really work out. The one pick that did, Joel Embiid, star center, probably going to win MVP this year.
You're going to hit on a pick, though. That's probably the best pick to hit on.
Oh, yeah. But I'm going to get to why now the trust in the process being built around Embiid, the process may not be so trustworthy, because now, again, the big Achilles heel with Joel Embiid has always been the injury bug. When they drafted him, they waited more than a season just to see him on the floor. We had forgotten about him. We did not know if he was going to work or not. They waited over 2 seasons, I think, before he made his debut against Oklahoma City in an opener, and he showed out. And since he's been healthy, he's been arguably the best center or the second best center we've seen in the game today. But he's doubtful now for game 1 of the second round. And they don't just play anybody in the second round. They play the Boston Celtics. That team, the team that they traded up with in that draft to take Fultz and let Tatum slide to the Celtics. Those big draft mistakes could, again, come back to haunt them in this series. Embiid now looks like he's probably going to be out game 1. The Celtics won the East last year. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, those guys know what it takes to win the East. They've done it. They've made it to the conference finals before that. They went up against Cleveland and LeBron one year. And they have a very well put together roster with a lot of depth. It's going to be a tall task for the Sixers in the second round.
Yeah, and the Sixers, I know the process can be such a meme, and in many ways they kind of earned it, but it'll be interesting. Like, the Celtics are also the defending Eastern Conference champs. Jason Tatum is phenomenal. As good as they are, I feel like I still just gotta go Celtics on this one. Like, not to knock the Sixers, I do think they're actually a very, very good team. But in the end, one team they're just better. And no matter, like, unless Embiid shows up and just has like a Steph Curry kind of night, which you really don't expect centers to do anymore, I think you're going to start having a debate of, are we going to see a rematch of last year's NBA Finals? Because if you ask me, I do, and just kind of going back to the Warriors for a moment, I do think the Warriors pull out a win against LeBron as they typically have done, besides the one time. So we'll see. I'm just going to say Celtics in 6. And because of that, it means that the Sixers are going to sweep the Celtics because that's just how it goes when I speak about things. I don't predict well, apparently. And we'll see. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, I like the Celtics to win this series. I think the Celtics will win it in 5 or 6 games, somewhere around there. They have the depth. I think it goes behind Jaylen Brown. I think Jaylen Brown's been the driving force of this team for a while. I know all the eyes usually gravitate towards Tatum, and he's a phenomenal player. But if you look back to last year's finals, Jaylen Brown drove the bus. And Al Horford, when he contributed, former Gator, they won those games in the finals. Al Horford was phenomenal. Jason Tatum, this is going to have to be his moment. He's going to have to step up and shine. But I do think until we've seen that, you got to put the ball in the hands of Jaylen Brown in the postseason. He's the key to get you to the next round. He's your guy. I do think Boston's going to get it done. Again, we've seen a lot of injuries and injury scares so far in this postseason. One near with Jimmy Butler. We'll get to that in a moment when we talk about Knicks Heat in a moment.
That's what I'm really ready to talk about.
Yeah, and but the Celtics are again, they're a complete team. They have the experience, and they're so well put together. You can just see Brad Stevens, the general manager's handprints all over this roster because they've gone through like 3 different coaches in the past 5 years, and they're always competing. Brad Stevens obviously was the guy. He got promoted to GM, and then it was Ime Udoka. He had a great year. Got in trouble for off-the-court issues in-house for the Celtics, not a league violation, but more of a Celtics violation. Now they're on to their 3rd coach. So it's like they're still winning. They're finding ways to win these games. So I still think they're going to get it done. Yes, Doc Rivers, former Celtics coach, is on the other side. He has experience about winning an NBA championship, but it's been a while. It's been a while since he's been able to get over that hump and get it done. I do like the Celtics in that series in 5 or 6 games. I can't really decide on which one I like because I could see, one team stealing a game here or there, but 5 or 6 for the Boston Celtics. And then, of course, pivoting to, in my opinion, one of the more exciting series now that we have going on in the second round, which is the New York Knicks and the Miami Heat. Before I dive into the stats, the numbers, let's just talk about the tradition of Madison Square Garden and basketball. It is back. It is in the second round. We haven't seen this in a decade. I kind of felt like a kid again watching a little bit of this series, this game 1, seeing Pat Riley coming into the building, former Knicks coach. He coached the Knicks to an NBA Finals appearance in the 90s. They fell short to the Rockets. And then, of course, the Miami Heat. Dwayne Wade was in attendance. Obviously, Spike Lee is always there on the sideline. And you can just feel the energy in the building again. Obviously, Madison Square Garden is a place that people will go to year-round. But when it's playoff basketball in Madison Square Garden, it doesn't get much better than that. You can just feel the tension in the building. You love the organs playing. And it just always seems like those games come down to the wire. So that's to start this thing off. Miami, New York. It's going to be
and I just want to point out for Madison Square Garden, it's one of those places. It's kind of like the same with the Kings. It's typically pain when you're a Knicks fan. But when you finally have, and they can sometimes be a bit of a dormant fan base, especially when you have the Yankees doing well, one of the hockey teams or football teams doing well. Everyone, I'm saying one of the hockey teams, one of the football teams, because it's not like, Yankees, Giants, and Mets, Jets. Everyone in New York is a Knicks fan. The Nets really are, they just got there a decade ago. The truth is they're second fiddle. But when they get the chance to be in a playoff game, and you see it with Rangers games too, me going back to hockey, I'm just making it into a meme at this point. I've accepted it. I don't blame them for showing up. You've waited a decade for this. Be loud, be electric, shake Miami to the core, even if it didn't go as planned in game 1. Be the Spike Lee, be 20,000 Spike Lees in the crowd. You've earned it, Knicks fans. I forget, they made the playoffs a couple years ago. This is really the time they are truly good. I know last time they still probably have Trae Young doing you got one in their minds.
Yeah.
They're ready. They're ready. They are so ready.
Yeah, and you bring up obviously some good points. And obviously, yeah, the last time that the Knicks were in the playoffs 2 years ago, and they took on the Atlanta Hawks, and Trae Young kind of played the new villain role. He was the new Reggie Miller. I mean, when we talk about epic series in Madison Square Garden in the playoffs, it starts with the Spike Lee, Reggie Miller feud way back in the 90s. Epic series there between Patrick Ewing, John Starks, and of course the Pacers squad led by obviously Reggie Miller and coached by Larry Bird. But now it's a new era of basketball. Who is going to be that villain for Miami? It kind of seems like that's kind of a whole collection of just the team itself. Jimmy Butler lays it out on the line every single game. It's kind of funny because when you look at the regular season, Jimmy Butler, it's like, does he even care about basketball? And then it gets to like near the
Michael Jordan.
and it's like, oh, there's Jimmy Butler. He's playing pretty good ball. And then it gets to the playoffs and it's like, get this man some help. It is 80s Michael Jordan trying to drop 60, and he is wearing himself down. I think he avoided an injury scare today. He rolled his ankle pretty bad in the final 5 minutes of the game, but he got up and he continued to play the game.
After the post-game interview as well.
Yeah.
And when someone is on their own power like that, you probably have a little bit like, okay, he can walk this off, sit for a little bit tonight, get some extra sleep. Hopefully he's back for a game. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he sat out one game. You let the Knicks just run the table for game 2, and then you come back with a healthier Jimmy in game 3. But this is not the same thing as losing Tyler Hero. Like, no. If you lose Jimmy Butler, it's goodbye. It was fun. We'll see you in October. So if you're the Heat, you really, really need to make sure that Jimmy Butler is able to play at least not every game the rest of the way, but at least back by game 3. And that would be like what, 3 days off to 4 days off? I'm not even sure how many days are off between games 2 and 3. Is it the usual 1 day, or are they giving him like that 2-day travel time?
Yeah, so between games 2 and 3, they're actually going to have 3 days off between those games. The NBA, obviously, and I think this is obviously by the Players Association over time. LeBron James, obviously, being the driving force of that, not the president, but some of the older players like Chris Paul, these guys. Obviously, you want to see the best product you can out of playoff basketball, and these back-to-backs, these double headers, sometimes it's just you're not going to get that. You're going to get worn down players. You're going to get sloppy basketball. You want these guys rested. Yes, it's going to take a little longer to get through series. We kind of know that, but you get higher quality of basketball. And, if you look at the Knicks and you look at the Heat did get one. And to your point, maybe the Knicks, maybe the Heat do rest Jimmy Butler in game 2, let the Knicks take a game, because throughout the Knicks history, they are 0-7 in a playoff series that they have lost their first game at home. They have never won a playoff series when they lost game 1 at home, and they have now lost game 1 at home. Yes, the Heat are the lower seed, but I do think they're the better team. I am hoping this series goes 7 games, because game 7 in Madison Square Garden would be one for the ages, but we're going to have to wait and see. Hopefully these guys will all be healthy. That Julius Randle, to be noted, did not play in game 1, and I do think that's a factor. I think if the Knicks get him back, it's a whole new series, and you're looking at a 7-game series if both of these teams are healthy, because Julius Randle can match up against Bam Adebayo much better than Mitchell Robinson can, or some of the collection of players they can put against Miami to throw at him. So I think that if they get Randle back, we're going to be in for a long, exciting series.
Yeah. And plus, these are two teams that, and I'm just one more time getting a stat up here just because I like having those in front of me. Home court absolutely matters, especially if you're the Miami Heat. I feel like that's just a trend, kind of making the winning game 1 in Madison Square Garden a little more important. Just to the fact that, yeah, I'm sure the Knicks can probably take one in Miami, but this will go 7 games just purely on the fact that home court advantage matters so much for two of these teams, especially the Heat. I think that honestly makes it more fun, just because when you're there rooting for your team, you got something to cheer. It would take kind of a hefty upset, I think, at this point for the Knicks to take multiple games in Miami. But we'll see. I'm excited. This is probably the series I'm the most excited for. Might be a little. I'm not from Miami, but being from Florida and having some ties to New York, I definitely am very invested in this series in particular.
Very well said, Harrison. I agree as well. Well, Harrison, another phenomenal episode, basketball, and I love talking basketball. We're gonna have another phenomenal episode coming up for you guys. Hockey playoffs round 2.
And
Thank you guys for being with us. I'm Josh. That's Harrison, and this has been another episode of Awkward Sports. Peace.